Welcome to your weekly astrology forecast for the week of September 11th through the 17th. This week we have a new moon in Virgo. We have Venus continuing to make its ongoing aspect to Uranus. And then we also have the sun making a helpful aspect to Jupiter, which is really a part of this new moon in Virgo situation as well. My name is Shauna McGrath. I'm a psychotherapist and astrologer, and I am excited to share the astrology of this week with you. So let's talk about first what the moon is doing. And so I want to share this because it's really interesting when we have a new moon that's happening midweek, which is essentially what's happening this week. We have the new moon in Virgo exact on Thursday, September 14th at 6:39 p.m. Pacific time. And so as we move toward this new moon in Virgo, so for the bulk of the early part of the week, we are in the waning phase of the lunar cycle. And so this is primarily in the sign of Leo. And we get this really sweet aspect when the moon is waning, so before Thursday, where the moon is in Leo and it's with Venus. And Moon Venus together feels like this really sweet time to connect, to engage in any kind of social interactions or closure, especially because it's a waning moon. So we think about with the waning moon, things that we want to wrap up or tie in a bow or even let go, that there's this feeling of closure or wrapping up or repair even. And that may be a wrapping up of one part within a broader cycle that's going to continue to be ongoing, but we're sort of like wrapping up a part of that broader storyline. So I think that's really helpful to have the moon there with Venus. And then, of course, the moon will go into Virgo. We'll have our new moon. I'll talk more about that in a moment. And then towards the weekend, we have the moon moving into the sign of Libra. And Mars is currently in Libra. So we have then the moon with Mars, which brings a lot more of like courage, ambition, action. And so it's kind of like earlier in the week, there's maybe a sense of lower energy early in the week with the waning moon and introspection and wanting to sort of like sort things out. And then we have the new moon, and then there's this feeling of momentum going forward into the weekend. Now, this new moon in Virgo is happening at 21 degrees of Virgo. And this is important because it also means that this new moon is making an aspect to Neptune and Pisces. But before I talk about that, what is Virgo all about? What is a new moon all about? So new moons are always this time of planting seeds, of initiating something new. We can think of it as setting intentions, but we can also think of it as like keeping our eyes out for any scenarios that are starting to begin, where things are starting to, I was going to say take root, but that's not even the right, because the roots are not even there. It's like where there's this little sproutling that's starting to sprout from a seed. And so we want to look for the areas in our life where that's starting to happen and to feel where there is a potential for new growth in our lives. And it's really helpful if you know your rising sign to be able to find the house in your birth chart where Virgo is, because that's going to tell you the area of life, whether it is career or home, family, relationships, education, finances, etc. It's going to tell us more about where that is for you personally. Now, Virgo is a sign that is a mutable sign. So mutable signs are about change and transition. And it's also an earth sign, which is about the practical matters of life and even security and safety to a certain extent. Virgo is also ruled by Mercury, which is the planet of the mind, the thinking mind, the intellect, our communication, and even divination and dreams. And so a new moon here, there's this theme with Virgo around finding ways to transition in a way that is helpful and practical. This is the mutable earth situation. Virgo is so gifted at discernment and sorting and being able to like figure out what exactly is happening in a scenario and how to move through the process in a way that brings a sense of wholeness, brings a sense of healing. And I talk a lot more about Virgo in another video that I made on Virgo Pisces, the Virgo Pisces axis as a symbol of the healer or healing. But we can think of Virgo in short as really mastering systems, mastering our ability to go through a process in a way that is that we can make devotional and ritualistic through bringing a sense of meaning into what it is that we're doing, whether that is brushing our teeth or drinking our coffee or going to sleep or something more more close to a spiritual practice like meditation. So all of these things with Virgo times like this, of new moon and Virgo, we really benefit from bringing a sense of devotion and meaning making to things. And I think that's the case a lot of times in life always, but even more so with Virgo because there's this emphasis on what are we doing here that's purposeful and is of value, and how can we make the process meaningful toward the goal. Now, I said I'll talk about Neptune here in this equation as well. So Neptune is at about 26 degrees Pisces. We have the new moon in Virgo at about 21 degrees Virgo. So they're pretty close in opposition, and Neptune is a symbol of dissolving, dissolution. Neptune gets us in touch with the unseen world, with altered states of consciousness. So this includes things like our creativity and our ability to transcend the seemingly physical limitations of this world and to go into another world of our mind or of spirit. You know, even through things that kind of seem mundane, but through being moved by a piece of art or a film, or getting lost in a sport or an activity that you really love. So these are all Neptune kind of themes. So Neptune tends to diffuse the sense of materialness of things. And even more so when we're talking about the sign of Pisces, because Pisces amplifies and mirrors and adds to that sense of dissolving and things being more amorphous, so to speak. So what does that mean with this new moon? This means with this new moon, there's a potential to get a lot of intuitive insights and downloads, and through things like your dreams or synchronicity or any kind of divination tools that you like to use, like astrology or tarot or the I Ching, etc. And I think it's important to keep in mind whenever we have a Neptune transit like this, that Neptune also can have us hypersensitized. And so if you have Neptune connected by aspect to personal planets in your birth chart, you've probably experienced this as a part of who you are as a person who is more sensitized to the environment or to other people. And so, so our natural, innate psychic or intuitive senses that we all have in different ways, these are going to be or maybe amplified or kind of like kicked up a notch when we're thinking about Neptune in aspect to this new moon. And intuition is tricky because it's very subtle and we don't always have a sense of exactly what the intuition means. Sometimes it's very direct, but sometimes it's sort of like subtle, or we can't really get a read on exactly what's happening, or we misread things. And so there can be a lot of fear that comes up when we misread what it is that we're sensing. And this is the thing with Neptune, is that Neptune can be a symbol of fear, or like constriction, and like not wanting to be out in the world because it feels overwhelming to be in the world. And so I would just notice, like, what your natural tendencies are and what your limits and boundaries are. And notice, maybe where you do need to have more downtime and have time away from something that maybe feels overstimulating. Um, and then how can you feel that sense of safety and groundedness so that you can have a meaningful experience, so that you can have um, a feeling of connection to yourself in a way that's maybe more deep, or more metaphysical, or more creative than you normally would. Okay, so that is what I have to say. Oh, I'll add one more thing about this new moon, and then we'll talk about what Jupiter is doing here, and then Venus, Uranus. So it's important to note that we also have Mercury, which is still retrograde in Virgo. Mercury's a little bit earlier in the sign of Virgo. It's around 8 degrees or so. So it's a little bit farther away, but it's still present within this sign. So we can think about Mercury is still in the room with the new moon, with the moon and the sun. And Mercury retrograde is this process of reviewing and thinking back and sort of like retooling things, or giving attention to things which we, for whatever reason, had to gloss over at some point in time. And so there's this kind of, there's a lot of attention here around Virgo this month, because we have the sun there, we have the new moon, of course, and then we also have Mercury not only there, but it's there for a longer period of time because of the retrograde. And so, like, this is an area of the sky that's really being emphasized. And so, of course, this again is also why it's important to, or helpful to, look at where Virgo is happening in relation to your birth chart, because that tells us, okay, like, what is happening here through the Virgo emphasis. Okay. So the other piece of this, so this is where the moon is, or sorry, the sun in Virgo, right, is going to make an exact trine to Jupiter. Because it's so connected with the new moon this week, it's really connected into the, Jupiter's connected into the lunar cycle that we're having, just in the way that Neptune is connected. So Jupiter is about expansion. It's about being open to new things. It's about expanding the ways in which maybe we've limited, like knowingly and unknowingly, like there's other things out there that maybe we haven't explored yet. And I really like this for us because a trine is a harmonious aspect. So trine is when things come in a way that tends to be easy, and sort of like there's an effortless kind of feeling tone here. So and then Uranus is pretty close here too. So I would even count that in as like both Jupiter and Uranus are like really are really coming in to bring some loving and exciting and eye-opening energy into this new moon time. So into our sense of where are we going and what are we creating. And the thing with trines is it's kind of like an energy that's so effortless that we can sort of pass over it and not realize it. So sort of like, something that is like I this is the way I would think of it is, have you ever done something where you publish something or you put something out there to, you give a presentation or something like that, where people give you feedback on it. Maybe thinking about like writing papers in school or something like that. And maybe you get like 10 positive comments or feedback, or, you know, something nice is said or something encouraging is said about what you do. And then you get one negative comment, or not even a negative comment, but something that's like constructive criticism. I find that our like our psychology as humans is that we will fixate on that one thing that was not super the best, that was like, oh, like either, this could have been tweaked or something like that. And like this is kind of what I think about when I think about like the trine energy. The trine energy is all of those encouraging feedback, all of that encouraging feedback that you get. Whereas in this case, the Neptune opposition is the thing that's a little bit like hard. And so it may be the thing that we focus on more. And um, the nature of an opposition with Neptune in this case is that it is something that we sort of are like confronted with, that is difficult to ignore. And that, so of course we should like process ways in which we feel, like fear or confusion around what it is that we're sensing. Like it's important to process that and to not lose sight of the opportunities and blessings that are coming in, that maybe they're so lovely and effortless that we don't even notice it. So that's what I would say about that. And then, okay, so also part of this is that Venus, which is now direct, still in Leo, but now direct, after being retrograde from late July to early September, Venus is now making an exact square to Uranus. And so, or sorry, an exact square to Jupiter. So Venus has kind of like been in this arena. So this is something that this planet has been moving back and forth between making this square to Jupiter through its retrograde process. And even just in general being in the whole sign of Leo as well. And so this is another way in which there may be some opportunities, and especially because it's Venus and we're thinking about the broader cycle, is that Venus has been retrograde. So there's been this re-experiencing and reimagining our relationships, who it is that we are in relationship, how we do relationship, what kind of person we are in all of the different relationships that we have, our relationship to money, to ourselves, to how we identify as a valuable individual in our society or in our community. So there may be something here around around continuing to explore and elaborate on any themes that involved this relationship Venus stuff from late July to early September. And I don't think it's going to be something new that you're feeling. It's going to be like continuing to further explore. And the Jupiter being about expansion, I really see this as like almost sounds kind of cheesy, but like continuing to expand your heart, which is Venus, continuing to expand your capacity for love and for receiving and for acceptance. And so this is something to think about. It's not always easy for us to receive all of the beautiful love and blessings that we crave. And so so that may be one way that this sort of manifests. Okay, so those are the core points that I wanted to talk about. So I'm going to pull some tarot for you. Yeah, and I'm curious, as always, how this lands for you, and um, certain aspects are going to resonate for you more strongly than others, depending on what's happening in your life and uh, your birth chart, of course, but also just sort of like what has led up to your current situation and where you are in your life. And then the planets uh, are sort of like activating different parts of self, different parts of how we exist and interact. Okay. Okay. So first card is the moon. And the figure in this card looks like super intent, sitting on a little crescent moon. Oh my gosh, so we have a new moon uh this week and we got the moon. That's very fitting. So this figure is sort of like sitting on the crescent moon and they're wrapped in a blanket and they have like a little cup of hot beverage that looks really sweet. And there's lots of bats in this card and they're kind of like perched over a little neighborhood. Now, the moon is a card that is so fitting when we're talking about the unconscious, and especially I think when we're talking about themes more around the collective unconscious. The moon is sort of like the wilds of psyche, like the things that we don't even know that we don't know, and the things that are so deeply rooted that they are experiences that we share as humans. And that could be ancestral things, that could be things that you track through your lineage, that could also be simply experiences that involve um, general human things like grief and birth and death and um, a desire for social connection, all of those things that we share. I pulled this card reversed, which feels very Neptunian to me, very Neptune opposition. And when I'm pulling this card reversed, so in general, this card to me is about um, there are things that we don't know. And like there are things that are so unconscious. And when I say unconscious, unconscious is not bad. I think that sometimes when that word is used, it can be um, used to describe material that we find like it trips us up in some way, and that's often the case. It's not always the case. There's so much in our unconscious that actually is some of the most beautiful and vibrant parts of ourselves that get put into the unconscious because of our cultural conditioning and for a variety of different reasons. Uh, so, uh, so the moon being a symbol of the unconscious, it's like there's something here that you don't know, that you don't even know that you don't know, and that it's reversed to me um, could mean that there's some confusion around it. I feel like I'm talking in similar themes as last week, because I think last week there was some confusion kind of themes going on. Um, so the moon is saying to me that there's some confusion kind of feeling like flipped upside down. And especially because this card, the figure is in the sky. They're like in this deck, most of the landscape is like inside of a home or inside of some kind of dwelling. But in this card, I find it important to note that the figure is outside and they're in the sky. And if it's reversed, it's kind of like topsy-turvy. So I'm also thinking of like the sense of security and like the root chakra of like safety and home and familiarity. And that is like there's something that has been twisted or turned or that feels unstable in some way. So I am going to go back to that, but take that for what it is. And then the Seven of Wands is the other card that I pulled here. And this figure is like sitting on a pillow and they're looking up at their cat. I want to read the guidebook for this one because I'm just feeling like it. So the Seven of Wands. Seven is so connected to divination as well. I'm thinking that. Seven of Wands. The road ahead requires preparation. Do not give in to others, your desires and principles. Believe and protect yourself. Okay, very interesting. I feel like this card is talking about not getting confused in the moon situation, like not getting tossed into that topsy-turvy thing. And, this card can also be about finding a sense of compromise, but it seems like in this case, it feels so important to connect to your own needs, your own authentic needs and desires, in any sort of confusion or conflict kind of situation. And this actually emphasizes our ability to protect ourselves. And then the final card is the Five of Wands. So this card also has like a little bit of like conflict resolution themes to it. I think it's interesting that I pulled the first two cards in reversed and this one is upright. So, and I'm even like really looking at the imagery in this card. The figure is sitting on a car, and then the broomsticks. There's like 4 broomsticks, which are like holding up what looks like the earth or like some kind of circular figure. This card to me feels like, I know it's like typically about conflict resolution, but it also feels to me like a strong theme around individuation, which individuation is having a clear sense of self, not being defined by solely by your external environment, and then being able to be yourself in your community, and like having a strong and flexible way of being in the world. And I'm saying that because four broomsticks, four tends to be thought of as a symbol of the self, of like the stability of the inner self. And then the sphere that's being held up here by the 4 broomsticks, the circle, is also thought to be another symbol indicating the self. And when I say the self, I mean like the core of who you are, not like your conditioning or like inner judgments, like the we could even say the soul part of you, if that's something that you resonate with. So yeah, so like I'm like feeling like there's some kind of confusion, like topsy-turvy feeling going on, and that protection of your psychic energy, of your mind, of your time, is really important. And it's really important to be connected with what it is that you want, and to be sure of yourself as much as you can. And that there's sort of like this strengthening process, and we may even say like an individuation sort of process that happens throughout this week. So yes, take that how it resonates. I hope that you've enjoyed this. I always love sharing these weekly forecasts with you. And so it's always such a pleasure and a joy to make these for you, and then to know that you enjoy them and that you get something out of it. And I also want to share with you that as a reminder, of course, I am a psychotherapist and astrologer, and I am accepting new psychotherapy clients. I work with folks from a variety of different backgrounds and orientations via Zoom. And if you resonate with my work and are interested in psychotherapy, I would love to hear from you, would love to connect with you. You can find out more about my process and my approach on my website, theastropsyche.com. And if you yourself are doing helping or healing work, if you're a counselor or an astrologer or a coach, a teacher, a caregiver, or essentially a person who's doing any kind of helping, healing, or holding space for other people, I'm doing a workshop for you. It's called A Workshop for Healers, and it's an elaboration and a synthesis of my master's thesis research on the psychopomp, which is a guide of souls after death, and how working with this symbolism of the psychopomp uh, can inform our role in these kinds of fields, anything where we're holding space for others in a way that helps us to um, contain our energy, to have loving boundaries, to prevent and recover from burnout, and to essentially to have a sustainable life doing this work that we find so very meaningful. So that workshop is 2-hour workshop. It's being held live as well as recorded. I would love for you to join me. We will be incorporating astrology into that process, and I'll be doing chart examples from folks who are able to attend live. It's on Thursday, September 21st at 6 p.m. Pacific time. And you can find out more about it on my website, theastropsyche.com, and where you can attend live, or you can also get the recording as well. The early bird pricing ends on September 15th. All right. I am sending you lots of love and wishing you a wonderful week, and I'll see you soon. Bye.